Hello, and welcome to the Weekly Scroll podcast. My name is Ryan.
I'm not Hunter. I'm actually Jarrett.
I'm Will, the creator of 𝗏𝗏 𝗖𝗵𝘁𝗀 and some other stuff.
And some other stuff, yes. I think we talked about this before the show started, and none of us have any idea how many times Will's been on the show, but I feel like it's at least 3, maybe. I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And Jert, you're I think like 7 or 8. I feel like Jert, you're like either.
This is episode 5. This is not Cat Chats as you call it, but as I call it, Cat Chats. Episode 5.
I published the show, so I get to call it what I want.
I shout out to Die Sugars for remembering that for me. He was like, "Is this episode 5?" And I was like, "Yes." And I did have to check, and yes, it is episode 5. I don't know if I was on the show before that though.
You were, because we
have
an episode I think we have one called Jarrett Returns, so I feel like you had to be on at least one before the Jarrett Returns one.
Okay, so maybe this is 7.
At least 7.
Did we when Max ran us through the dungeon? Max Moon ran us through dungeon tests for some book.
I don't think we streamed that, did we?
Maybe not. Maybe we were just playing. But I always figure it's a stream, right? It's always a stream. Life is but a stream.
Yeah, very true. But hey, hello, people out there. This is the Weekly Scroll podcast, and it is not Cat Chats. This is our monthly chat with Jert. That is literally just an hour-long series of tangents. You just experienced the first one. And I'm experiencing some type of delay in my video, but for you listening, you don't give a shit. Hunter's not here today, so we have a special guest that is Will of 𝗏𝗏 𝗖𝗵𝘁𝗵, partially because Space Penguin, every time Jert comes on, we talk about 𝗏𝗏 𝗖𝗵𝘁𝗶 because we probably have like 5 more things a month from Will.
We got at least 2 this month.
At least 2 this month. So I think Space Penguin and 𝗏𝗏 𝗖𝗵𝘁𝗶 are inseparable at this point. So, Will, thank you so much. I know we were talking about how many times you've been on, but it's always great to have you on. And again, come on every month. I'll make 4 windows, considering, again, there's something every month. My Discord folder is literally 𝗏𝗏 𝗖𝗵𝘁𝗶 like monthly and just has everything that comes out. And Jert was supposed to send me the monthlies, but maybe next month we'll get it on time.
I screwed that one up. Guess what arrives today? The next monthly arrives today. So when it arrives and I open the box and I check on and make sure that We Are Dust was printed correctly, I will pack up one, put it right into a stay flat, and I will drop it off with tomorrow's mail because I already know I'm going to the post office tomorrow. So that way we'll, fingers crossed, be ahead. Now you watch it get lost in the mail.
Yeah. No, I think it'll be fine. I don't think I've ever gotten anything lost from SPI in the mail.
We've had a surprisingly low return rate. I'm jinxing it and inviting Murphy in the house and just being like, "Hey, there's your bedroom." But I'm trying to not. We've had a very low return rate and missing rate. One of the funniest ones was we're in Southwest Florida, and this was literally the next big town up, and it somehow got lost in a tidal wave or toilet bowl in Ybor City, which is where mail goes to die down here. So it got stuck there. Finally, I figured out I knew the person that it was going to, but he purchased it as a regular customer. And then we had tickets to see the Mountain Goats, and a couple of our friends canceled on going to see the Mountain Goats. So I'd actually worked it out with this guy, and I was like, "Hey, make it up to you. I've got tickets to see the Mountain Goats. Do you like the Mountain Goats?" He was like, "Yeah, that would be great." And he was like, "How much?" And I was like, "Don't worry about it. They're already paid for. Just come see the Mountain Goats with us," because these other folks canceled. We drove all the way there, and as we pulled in we stopped at just a mall to just get a quick bite to eat before we went to the show. Got a text and a reminder or a note from the Mountain Goats that their tour bus broke down. So not only did this package go missing, and I was going to replace it by hand to this person, and also take them to see the mountain goats. I did actually end up getting them in the mail, the replacement book, but unfortunately, the mountain goats have not rescheduled that show yet.
So basically, it's your fault the mountain goats bus broke down because there was an inevitability that that package would not be delivered. Is what we're saying.
Yes, that's
Perfect.
pretty much what it was.
Perfect. Wonderful.
I do put a curse on everything I make, so
There we go.
That explains it.
There we go.
Actually, if I remember correctly, it was Liminal Horror, so I have to blame Goblin Archives for that one. I think it was a copy of Investigator, so it was not you this time. He also puts curses on his things, which is pretty handy for it's great. Do the lines that we run. Yeah, I'm just doomed.
You do make it a stipulation in our contracts that we have to put curses on everything. So
I know it's in there. It's always in there.
There we go.
Pre-curse. It's pre-curse 7.1.
So this month, we always start the show and it's just like, so what are we talking about today? I'm sure there's things we're going to talk about. What do we have on the docket? Prior to getting to, I think the bigger thing, the thing that you sent me a little bit earlier, but the zines that I've already ordered that will be sent out in the mail. What do we got this month from Will and from Space Penguin?
So we've got 7 Deadly Sins, Gluttony, which is the next in the monthly FP. Do we want to go over this in depth, or we want to just do a quick look? Or
that's entirely up to you.
Okay. I'm gonna hold this up, and Will is gonna talk about it.
Yeah. So it's this was one of the partnerships one we did with a company called 𝗏𝗏 Miniatures. They did the official Morkborg minis, I think last year, and we did a thing with them called Rotten Bits. And they've got some new minis. These aren't necessarily connected to Morkborg, but they're very Morkborgian themed, I would say. They're doing a collection of different based on the sins. So this is obviously based on Gluttony. So working with them, they had a Kickstarter where you could get the minis, and we did some rules for them as we've done before, and the same kind of deal where we then publish like these little zines that you can use for Forbidden Psalm, add these horrific little monsters to your games, as well as like some extra scenarios. So even if you don't own the minis, there's content here that can be added to your games of Forbidden Psalm. So some extra scenarios, some extra rules, some little extra bits for your kind of crews and warbands to get involved in. So another little zine coming off the back of one of those partnerships. We've had a couple of these over the years, and they're always really like super fun to take someone else's kind of miniatures and their art, and then put the Forbidden Psalm spin on it. So and 𝗏𝗏 are like really lovely guys, and their minis like are legit some of my favorite minis. They are so they're hand sculpt and then resin cast, and the quality on them is just insane. Like they do not look hand sculpted at all. They look like CAD design because they just put so much detail into them. It's always really great fun to work with them on it, and it means I get some really fun miniatures as well, which is the main reason I do it. It's just I want more toys.
Yeah, I got the 𝗏𝗏, like I got the Morkborg official ones, and they are pretty minis. They absolutely are. Yeah,
the troll is like just so good.
Was 𝗏𝗏 the ones who did those casts of the of Anna Gardens of 𝗏𝗏?
No, that was.
Or was that Knucklebones?
That wasn't Knucklebones either. That was Andrew May Miniatures.
Andrew May. Okay, gotcha. Meridian, right?
Yeah. Meridian Miniatures.
Look at that. See, so many. It's that's part of the fun. Is like I even get confused half the time, and we've been doing these, you and I together, for 3 years now. But the books overall, like the Forbidden Psalm is a line, but I even like it's just because the quality of those 3 folks that we've worked with and we've done these with, like in my brain, which is a spun up mess. Like it's all the same creator, and I have to be like, wait, is it this person? And also doesn't help that I, for some reason, can't keep confusing Meridian with 𝗏𝗏. I don't know why. My brain is it's just kind of a mess like that. But these things are great, and it slotted right into our monthly series, which the next one, like I said earlier, arrives today. So we might get a preview of that one if it pops in.
Well, the only thing, so this is number 6 of the monthly, but it's 7 Deadly Sins, and I was just like, man, if it was just 1 month later, it would have slotted right in there. But Collection of Death is the book that came out recently with the End Times edition, and that collects a lot of those things. Like I know it has Rotten Bits in it. Dead Church, which is Dead Church miniatures. What else? Dark Crusade was Westphalia too, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was theirs, and that's only in Collection of Death. So that was when we did, as we were doing the End Times Kickstarter, they happened to be running the Dark Crusade Kickstarter. We got chatting, and I was like, hey, can I steal your art and basically add this to the book? And they were like, yeah, of course. So yeah, we added that in as well. There's a bunch of other content. There's like Halloween specials in there, that Festival 1 and 2. Yeah, so that Collection of Death, and you know, spoiler, there'll probably be a Collection of Death 2 coming where we put together all of these.
What?
I know. Shock. Yeah, like this is the kind of the idea that we're doing is we're going to do these monthlies, build them up, and then at some point in the future, we want to collect them.
Awesome.
Yeah,
basically just like build an anthology and then just put it all together. That's fantastic. Now with the 7 Deadly Sins, this is Gluttony. Are we going to get 6 more?
Potentially. It depends if Westphalia make more minis in that range. So they're working on some unbelievably cool sci-fi minis at the moment. That's their next campaign, and I'm already like chatting to them about like, hey, I want to do stuff for these because these are just some of the most cool baller sci-fi minis I've seen. It's really like the spacesuits are almost like diving bell-esque like spacesuits. So it's really cool. But it's not like steampunk, it's more just like really shitty tech. And I'm there for that. So that's coming at some point soon, and I'm going to see if I can do something with them. And then I think their plan was to do more of the Deadly Sins, but they haven't announced anything yet. And I've not had conversations with them, but if they do it, I'll be there straight away. Yeah, I love their stuff.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, like you said, what they put out is crazy, and like I love Forbidden Psalm. I definitely, one of the things I've always liked, and when we first reviewed it, was how you can play it as not only as a war game but also as an RPG. So I tend to run Forbidden Psalm more as like the RPG side of it than the war game. But one thing that I really like is the ability to kind of like mix and match the two, where you can like RPG it, but when you really hit a big combat, you can just be like, fuck it, let's war game this thing. And it feels so nice to be able to slot in between the kind of like modes without really there being like, I guess, specific modes. Like it feels like it's just it flows very well between the two styles in any way you want to do. Like smaller combats, you can just like run it out, but like bigger ones, you can just be like, all right, here you go. So that's always nice to have. And then the minis are just a bonus to have awesome stuff on the board as well.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, I had that at Gary Con 2023 when I ran Dread Knights for folks, because you don't need another human to run this game. You can play it by yourself. You can play it 2-player. We have multiplayer variants. And I started off being like, okay, hey, it's not a final edit book, like it's in process, but here's how most of it's going to go. And then people were doing that. And then after I kind of coached them through like the first whole round of everybody, then they started getting into it, but then they even started falling into more of the narrative aspect. And we had one group was people I knew. So that was always going to be more narrative, but the other one were definitely like 3 of them were war gamers. They were like definitely like dyed in the wool. They play a lot of Warhammer and other stuff like that, and they started leaning into some more of the narrative as it got closer to the end. I ran the last scenario in Dread Knights with the wedding and everything like that. And yeah, it flows. Like we have a table set up in the shipping room here that I told Debbie, I was like, okay, I'm wrapping up Endless Horrors, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But I'm like, I need to play some of these because I know Will plays these because he's writing them, but I still need to play them and make sure that, like that's the joy of doing this work. Of a lot of this stuff is getting to see these things first. So thanks, buddy. And then the second one, also in Forbidden Psalm, but not written by Will, but definitely inspired by Will. Most Muscular minis, written by Tyler Welch with design by Eric Hill. And Eric, if you're listening, he's not. He said he's out, but it's some super simple, super clean takes. This one is standalone, so similar to the Clock Goblins. For those listeners, I was about to say readers. For those readers reading, similar to Clock Goblins, it's standalone. It's got the guts kind of in there. And this was inspired by the Meatheads Jam, which Meatheads is a great system that is almost finished. They crowdfunded it, written by my friend Blark and designed by Eric, edited by Matt Kay. And it started out as Blark running us through this like all fighters dungeon. So hence the name Meathead. So we're all like beefy and built up in brawn. And that was, inspired by like chainmail and OD&D. And so that was definitely an RPG, but it had the wargaming roots there from a lot of the basic stuff. And then it iterated into full-on RPG system, mega dungeon and rules and all that stuff. Mark took that to crowdfund. Like I said, that one's being worked on, but he ran a jam, or the gang ran a jam for the Meat Jam. And Tyler is also linked to us through Tyler knows Goblin Archives from Liminal Horror. So it's a small world, but it gets around. But Tyler is a huge FP fan, and so took that and did this. And so in this one, it's you use whatever minis, but what does he say? He says to get your beefiest, brawniest miniature. So I'm interested in seeing one on the FP Discord once people get a hold of this here in the next couple of weeks, as orders are going out this weekend. I'm interested in seeing these like full-on big beefcake things, and then have that roll back into actual meatheads at some point too. It's like you were saying, it's like, you could pretty much go both directions or all directions with the stuff. And it's one of those, like Ryan said, it's like one of those when you're like, cool, let's take it tactical. Like let's skirmish this out. But then, man, now I'm too tired. It's been a brutal week at work, and let's just narrate this entire scenario. And I think you can do that and get away with it too.
Yeah, we actually got to play Meatheads on the show. Our TRS Play series episode 8, way back in it says 4 months ago. Yeah. We got to play with Stella Condre, and Blark was on, and it was a good time. It's great. It's super fun game. I love how, like, I don't know, kind of a little like farther out than Merkborg on the spectrum of like a serious game that does not take itself that seriously. Merkborg definitely has that like Gonzo aspect of it. Meatheads takes itself like 1% seriously, and I love that so much about it. Yes. It was so much fun, and even in the context of playing the game, we had a character who just said, "Fuck it, let's do this thing," and like instantly died, and it felt very Meatheads at the time. So, super great game. Blark puts out a lot of amazing stuff. Eric Hill's a fantastic designer. Yes. Both of them are super great people. So definitely excited to get that in hand.
Oh, and then Debbie also wanted Eric to know, like, and I've told him, but that she just dislikes that cover because she wraps all of these individually before she shipped out. So she had to see this picture for 300
like your self-portrait on the front there, Jared?
Exactly. Yeah, she was just like, that cover is just disgusting. And I'm like, yes, exactly. But yeah, no, I'm excited for this weekend in the midst of doing some other freelance work of getting this to the table and getting some stuff for Endless Horrors. So now look at this. Look at that. I segued into Endless Horrors. Boom, boom, boom. I even said it out loud.
Endless Horrors. I'll segue out for just a second because I had a little note here to myself. I love everyone that keeps rediscovering that 4th edition's not a bad game at all, and gamifying your game is not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. It's my favorite thing. So yes, Endless Horrors. I'm just gonna hop over to this page. I have a new for those listening. Again, this doesn't matter to you, but for those watching, new page. Look, da-da.
Didn't it just do like a star wipe or something?
Yeah, it's really just like a fade. It's called it's called wipe. Yes, but Great page here. We got all three of us, and I get to actually display the stuff next to me. So first of all, I've said this like 8 times now. This cover fucks really hard. It's amazing. So Will, talk to me about Forbidden Psalm Endless Horrors. What's going on?
Yeah, so well, the art is by artist called 𝗏𝗏. He's done art for us before on Forbidden Psalm projects. Just incredible artist, and I'll talk a little bit about the process on that because it's quite fun. But essentially, about, I don't know, 6 months ago or so, I was reading some Call of Cthulhu-esque roleplay game. I can't remember which one, and it had that paragraph at the start that they all have to have, where they're like, Lovecraft is a shithead, but we're going to use his stuff anyway. He's the grandfather of cosmic horror, but he's a shithead because he was a racist shit. And I was just kind of like, this is really unfortunate that this genre is so indebted to this not very nice person with very awful ideas. Wouldn't it be cool if we had some cosmic horror that just didn't have to talk about that? And I know I'm now immediately talking about it, so I'm kind of going into my own point. And that's kind of where Endless Horror came out of, was I wanted a game where the first thing you did was make your own Elder God. And that's what you do in the game. So it's Forbidden Psalm kind of core rule set, but it's a complete standalone game. And you play as a cult trying to end the world. You've decided, like in all the other games, you're either trying to survive the end of the world, eke out an existence at the end of the world, or stop it. And this one, you're like, nah, screw it. The world needs to end. Let's go about doing that. And the first thing you do in the game is there's 3 D100 tables that you roll on. And essentially, you give a description to your Endless Horror. You give it a purpose and a desire. And because there's 3 D100 table, there's a million combinations. So that's kind of where the name came from. Endless Horrors from Between the Stars. Not technically endless, there's a million combinations, but near enough. And your descriptor can be anything from grotesque to dire, or terms like that. What it kind of does can be anything from takes everybody's eyes or wants all the other eyes, and then the same with the desires. They've got this kind of range. And then also we go into like silliness as always, because we're still Forbidden Psalm, so there's still some tongue-in-cheek elements. So the desires range from wanting to spread disease and famine to the whole world, to wanting to change all the fonts in the world to Comic Sans. And that's the first thing you do, is you generate this Elder God that your cult is going to worship. And then across the campaign as you play, because it has a narrative campaign, again, you can use it as a roleplay supplement. You're trying to bring this Endless Horror to the world. So you're converting civilians to your cause. You are going out and doing rituals. You are summoning avatars of your god, which depending on what Endless Horror you generate, depends on what your avatar does. And then you play across this narrative campaign. And at the end, you try and perform the final ritual to summon your Endless Horror. And if you're successful, the Endless Horror comes and the world ends. And then there's a section at the back that you cross-reference what horror you generated with this section at the back. And then it tells you how it ends the world. So the Comic Sans one, for example, spoiler, it ends the world by changing all the fonts to Comic Sans, and humanity just gives up. We accept that the world is not worth living in anymore, because all the fonts, all the logos in the world are suddenly Comic Sans, and we just can't take it anymore. We give up. All the way through to spreading disease that cannot be cured and all these things. So it's quite a bleak game, but there's a lot of silly humor throughout. And yeah, that's the game. It's another Forbidden Psalm kind of core concept. So if you've played or come across any Forbidden Psalm games, you kind of know what this beast is. It's fully compatible with Morkborg and Forbidden Psalm. You can use it as a role play supplement. It's got, from my opinion, some of the best art that I've had in any of my books. 𝗏𝗏 just nailed it. So what we did with the art is we pre-generated 10 of the horrors. So we rolled on the table, me and 𝗏𝗏, and then we just gave the description of the horror, and then 𝗏𝗏 just drew whatever they wanted. And that's how we ended up with these just incredible pieces of art from 𝗏𝗏, was just by giving those descriptions. And that's kind of the thing I'm most excited about, is people generating their own and then deciding what that looks like, and either sculpting a miniature or making something or finding a miniature that matches it. I'm really excited for that element of this game when it hits people's hands. Yeah, it's on Kickstarter at the moment. It's pretty much finished. It's just in the editing phase now. I just finished the first pass this week, and it's going over to Roz, our other editor, next week. And yeah, it's fully fleshed out. It's probably, I think, from core books, it's one of the longest ones we've done, because it's got all these extra tables, these D100 tables in. So it's quite a bit of a mammoth of a thing. But yeah, quite proud of it in terms of the look and the design. Feels like just very cohesive and kind of grim and beautiful in a very sick way. But yeah, that's the game.
It's got a lot of replayability, like you said. You've got the bit where you can remake any number of endless horrors, elder gods, whatever you want to call them. The book calls them endless horrors. That's what they're called. Come on. I'm the editor. I've got to remember that, because I'll just start calling them elder gods, and then I'll let elder gods slip in there. Or you will have written elder gods in there, and at some point I'm going to be like, fucking Will, because blame it on myself. But there's the mass replayability of it's fun. Like there's 3D100 tables that you can just sit there and just generate up those gods. I will probably generate 3 or 4 of them and then come up with what some people will call the stupidest one. Really, I want to get one of the ones that has that wants the ducks. More spoilers. There's one that wants wooden ducks, right? I would love to get that just so that I can make quacking noises the whole time. And then, yes, that is part of one of the things too, but that would drive Debbie crazy. She would be really annoyed with that. And one of the things I do with a lot of my characters is come up with bad voices that annoy my girlfriend. So I could have some fun just sitting around and rolling up, endless horrors all day. But then also there's also the ability to play all of these scenarios as investigators or knights, depending on the different era they're in. There's the 3 different eras that you can possibly play them in. Like these are all like little modular overlays over everything that add even more replayability. Like the fact that, I don't know, it's great that you wrote, and we moved him to the end, but you can play the entire game one direction as a cult versus the other, the cult of the crawling eye, which are like the big bad guys, or the investigators. But then you can also completely change the entire narrative and play it backwards, where you're the investigators, closer to like the Arkham Files games and stuff like that from Fantasy Flight, or your normal Call of Cthulhu type stuff, where you can play as the quote unquote good guys moving forward. And there's different stats for that. That's the thing I really love about all these iterations of FP and third party iterations about FP is you've set a great example of this is how you do it, because reskinning, and everyone listening, I'm sure, knows what skinning is and reskinning is. It's kind of an easy thing to do to a point with a lot of RPG systems, because you want to put something in space. Well, you change up your damage ranges and you maybe give them some space guns and stuff like that. And I think that the real great thing with FP is that it changes those individually. It's not just a simple paint job. We didn't do a palette swap on this thing and call it another thing. It's like each setting is tailored down to really, really, really make sense. Like that's like changing the names in most Muscular minis, just changing the names of specific monsters and stuff like that would have been enough, but Tyler actually went through and actually worked out their cool, weird special attacks that deal with brawn, and then you fight the big bad guy, the mass monster, and the mass monster does a cool, neat thing, as opposed to just being like a dragon and you fight it and stuff like that. So,
well, like reskinning is something I feel like it's like drumming, right? Like everyone can technically drum, but very few people are Neil Peart. So right. Like you can literally just be like, dungeon is now a spaceship, and like you reskinned it. But yeah, Forbidden Psalm, here's another thing that's great about Forbidden Psalm is there's a shitload of it, right? And every single one is built on roughly the same bones, but feels incredibly different. Like Dread Knights feels incredibly different than Last War. Kill sample process, everything. And like even going through this, because I got the pre-edit and now the edit for this, it again built on the same bones. You get to like the character creation page for like -3, -1, like all that. You're like, okay, it's Forbidden Psalm. And then you see, I'm looking at the spread on 88, 89 and see abysmal terror of the deep that wants to bring forth endless monstrosities. And you go through the rest of it. And it's not just a simple reskinning. It's definitely a much more in-depth kind of like, I don't know, like rebirthing, you know what I mean? Like it comes out with a whole new flesh bag, every time it does. And That is, again, another one of the things that I really love about Forbidden Psalm is that it's always going to feel familiar, but it's always going to feel different.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and then you mentioned the Last War and Dread Knights. Those are within 40 years of each other on either side of the turn of the 1800s going into the 1900s, you know, like if you place them in real world context, but they're both dramatically different. Like, you know, DN is definitely like, I'm fighting these vampires. Like, this is not a good time, you know, and then the Last War is, I'm in a war and there are also monsters there too, but this is also not a good time. But they're their own distinctly different versions of not a good time.
Yeah. And
it's a good time.
I think for me, it's that thing of when I do that and when I first did the first reskin, like the Last War, I didn't want it to just be that like, oh, I've taken the same game and I've taken the flaws and feats and I've taken these things and I've just renamed them to period appropriate things. It was like, no, this is all going to be new content. Partly so it's like, hey, you can add these books together and now you've got even more stuff like the flaws and feats tables and all the extra mechanics that get added and all these things. You can just play these as this huge game if you wish to. But it was also that value proposition. If you're going to ask someone to like drop some money on a new book, it feels disingenuous to just be like, oh, I changed the art. I changed the design. You know, for me, and like not discrediting anyone that does that, but for me, it was like, I want this to be a unique product that has new content, new in-jokes, new silly bits, new like narrative setting. That's a really important thing for me, feeling as a creator that like I'm not good at capitalism, so asking people to give me money for a thing I made, like I want to make sure it's the best value it can be for people. And yeah, like it's really important to me that each one of these games is really standalone and unique. And I don't want it to ever be like, oh well, I've played FP and I started playing Last War and it was the same thing, just they're guns now, so why would I bother? Like I want it to feel like this neat, unique experience you're having each time, that it is actually worthwhile doing. And Endless Horror continues that theme. And Joe mentioned like the different eras in it. So we've put rules in for playing it medieval, kind of turn of the century and modern. And again, the idea with that was like people can take their existing games of Forbidden Psalm if they want and use this almost as like a bolt-on. So you can take your warband and then suddenly they've become a cult in Forbidden Psalm, or in Last War in the trenches they've suddenly become a cult and they've decided to go off and do culty things. Yeah, that was also an important like factor of like, how does this game interact with the previous games if people have played them? Because there are people out there that have, I went to UK Games Expo and there were people coming up and like they've literally bought every single thing I've done ever, which was kind of blew my mind. So it was like, yeah, okay, well let's make a thing that like directly can be used as a bolt-on if they want it to be, as well as a standalone. So these kind of thought processes I go through when I'm creating these games of how do I make it so it feels valuable to people in that sense, that it has value. It's not just a reskin with some new pretty art, which in itself would be valuable, but yeah.
Ryan's holding up this pile of Forbidden Psalm.
I'm one of those people.
Oh yeah.
Because not only do I have everything, I have everything in softcover and hardcover in every color. I also have some like editor editions of things.
He's got some random stuff I've sent out to him and some random copies of stuff.
Yeah, I got some of the third party stuff, you know, like I remember doing the review of Forbidden Psalm and was like, oh no, please stop making stuff, because it will be a whole shelf here soon. Yeah. But yes,
yeah, it's been a really fun project though. Endless Horror, like it's been such to go like, so you know, in the other games they're not exactly light-hearted or anything in the sense of the settings, they're pretty grim. But this one to really lean into like, oh no, you are not good people. Like you're a cult. You're trying to end the world. Like that's been a really fun experience. Yeah, I've had a lot of fun just being a bit evil with it.
Yeah, so, for me, I just want to touch back on. I really enjoy. I'm scrolling through the PDF, realizing we got to put page numbers on the right side. I guess I got to do that. Maybe I'll make you do that, Will. I'll make you do that, Will. It's your weekend in the sandbox with the file. So get those page numbers on the right side. They're on some of them, but not all of them. So we got to take them off some of them. I see. Magic. And this is live editing. Here we go. But I just want to touch on again, like the you said the bolt-on aspect, and when we moved those investigators and knights, you know, playing as that back to the end, someone could conceivably just print those 3 spreads out and then and then it's almost like a distillation of Dread Knights, although Dread Knights has it is, but at the same time it's not. So you can play classically trained like 𝗏𝗏 as in the RPG, like you can play as the librarian, the scientist and whatnot, but you could even, like, I'm already seeing time travel happening. So there, see, and now we're going to do the time travel version where it's just see, I say this is how it works, people. This is how it works, folks. I say a thing, or Will says a thing, and then he just does it, and he just makes it happen.
Yeah.
What else do we have in the future? We have Forbidden Seas. That's sitting on my desk over here now. It's taking the place of Endless Horror, so that'll be next month. Is We Are Dust, which is summertime. Beating up the Chads at the beach. That'll be a good one. And then August is Forbidden Seas.
Yep.
And that's sitting over here. That one's going to be a double-sized issue of the monthly because I haven't even looked at it yet. I guess I should.
So it's your pirate, you know, pirates and stuff, and we wanted to have ship-to-ship combat as well as like more scenarios and like how do you man a ship and stuff like that. So it's, you know, it's quite a chunky one. It got some amazing art in there from a guy called 𝗏𝗏, who does just the weirdest wonderful things. My favorite art he's done that you'll see in it is a thing called the land shark, which is like a cross between a crab and a shark. It's just the weirdest creature and I love it so hard. And it just came from like people in the Discord going, is there going to be sharks? And I just was screaming back land shark for some reason. I was having a weird moment, and then now we have land sharks in the game. Yeah, so it's your pirate forbidden psalm basically. So it adds like rules for being a pirate, being a captain, manning a ship, how you upgrade your ship, how you board other people's ships, all that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty hefty one. So it's a longer of the monthlies. It's like 32 pages, I think it is. Then we've got in September, then will be the next one, which is Night in the Museum, which is an expansion for Dread Knights, in which you are essentially employed to go and steal back from a museum the artifacts they've stolen from other countries. So yeah, good. Some mysterious benefactors pay you to go in and like rough up the custodians of the museum and steal back their shit. So
is it stealing if it's really yours?
It's reacquiring. Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely that. So that's a fun one that I'm working on at the moment. Yeah, and then we've got.
And then what do we have for the rest of the year? I feel like
October is will be Dead Festival 4, so that's your Halloween themed, your Halloween themed spin. November is. It's a Last War expansion, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes. And then we've got December is Seasons Beatings 2, which is like our Christmas theme one that we're going to be doing. So yeah, that's the year out. And then we've already got plans for next year. So as well as other big books coming. So we're going to be doing, hopefully launching 𝗏𝗏𝗏 come November time, which is the basically kid-friendly version of Forbidden Psalm. It's not really kid-friendly. And
I mean, let's be honest. Ren and Snippy was a kid show. No, it fucking wasn't. Rocko's Modern Life was a kid show. No, it fucking wasn't. So like, if we're doing kid shows like that, then yeah, it's for kids.
That. So it is the setting for it is it's a 90s childhood as a game. So you play in it as a group of children who are having a summer adventure, and you're basically dealing with goblins have come to town because there's a thing called goblin juice. But then it turns out the company have been juicing the goblins, so you actually have to go save the goblins. So that's what I mean. It's child friendly, but it's about saving goblins from being juiced. So it's it's a very 90s like spin. But yeah, you're not sure if you're playing as the kids' like imagination or not. So it's very like that kind of setting where you could use any minis because it's the kids are being their imagination, right? Like they seeing themselves as these heroes, but you could also just play with kid models that are running around with cardboard swords. So
yeah,
it's that.
That's awesome. I mean, so here, this is, I mean, 90s cartoons were fucked up. Like, my parents didn't let me watch The Simpsons growing up, probably because some news at some point said it, but they let me watch Ren and Stimpy. And I distinctly remember an episode where he's, like, using a cheese grater to, like, cut the skin off of his leg and then pouring salt and lemon into it. I'm like, I'm not allowed to watch The Simpsons, but I can watch this. Yeah. So, make it make sense. That sounds awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. So I look back. The last time you were on was actually both of you together, episode 114. That was only about 45 episodes ago. That was just talking about End Times Edition. But I feel like even the time you were on before that, you were talking about the space game. I don't remember what it was called at the time. Wasn't it called
Mora,
like
yeah.
Project Mora? Yeah. Is Project Mora? Is this Project Mora?
No, so Project Mara is coming. So what Project Mara was originally was going to be a take on Mothership. Put into a miniatures game. So instead of using Morkborg as the kind of, and the rules of Morkborg into the Forbidden Psalm engine, it was going to be using the Mothership one. And as it was a new thing, I was doing a lot of play testing, so that's what delayed it a bit. But then also I wanted to wait until the Mothership box set actually was out in retail before making something that was a spin on it, because I wanted to play Mothership and get a feel for it before I wanted to then convert it. We've actually decided to make it as a module for Mothership in the sense that there'll be a way to play it as a role play module. But actually, we've decided to use the Forbidden Psalm engine for it because there's no reason to change. Like, actually, because all of these games don't, and I don't mean this disparagingly of my own thing, but they kind of don't really matter on the engine. The engine's there to fuel the narrative. So as long as that's still happening, then it doesn't really matter. So that's coming out next year. The whole idea with that game is you're going to have your core book, which will be quite thin, which is going to be, it's called Legitimate Salvage. Legitimate Salvage is the core rules, and they're going to be based on Forbidden Psalm, and it tells you how to make your crew and all that kind of stuff. You essentially play as four, you have a crew of four that are employed by an awful company to go and undertake legitimate salvage. And then we're going to have modules that you slot in. And the first one is Project Mara, where you go onto this space station called Mara, and you're trying to basically salvage it for this company. But of course, it's filled with horrible things. And that's what each game is going to be. And the idea in this game, unlike the other games where you have a small amount of resource at the beginning, in this, you can buy all the equipment you want, but then you're in debt to the company. And then that's going to have like an in-game effect of like how much debt you have and how much you need to incur each mission. And they take interest off your money each time. There's a whole thing where they don't pay hazard pay unless one of your guys die. So if everybody lives, even if they get really messed up, they're like, no, we didn't die, so it wasn't that dangerous. So it's very like corporate horror in that sense. But yeah, you play as like a salvage crew. That's definitely coming. It's on the slate for next year. So starting to engage artists into that project at the moment. The kind of core setting is all written up. There's probably about 30% of the design work already done on it. But yeah, that's one that's coming.
That's awesome. There's like a tinge of Traveler in there a little bit on like being in debt, but I love the kind of what one thing comes out and there's a bunch, but there's like the Lethal Company game, and then there's like the other ones, like those video games where it's like, go capitalism over there and we'll take all the bits, and if you die, oh well, that's cool. It's a nice matchup of like a Lethal Company and like Traveler bits and the obvious risk of immediate and brutal death per Forbidden Psalm. So that sounds awesome.
Yeah, there's a whole mechanic in there that if you don't pay your debt back at the end of each scenario, you just lose one of your crew as they harvest their organs for the money. Like you just lose somebody. So you have that like risk reward where you're just trying to make enough money to not lose somebody. So
that's awesome.
You can take all the equipment you want at the beginning, like you can be fully decked out in the best armor, guns, everything, but then it's very unlikely that you're going to make that money back in that like each scenario. And then you're going to start losing people as the company comes in, and it's just like so it's very corporate horror Repo Man almost esque.
I was going to say there's some Repo Man aspects in there too, which is an incredibly underrated movie. Not just the opera, but like the actual like, oh my gosh, Forrest Whitaker and Jude Law Repo Man movie. Underrated. Great movie.
It's terrible but also great.
Listen,
It's one of
terrible
those
but also
movies. I love
great.
it.
Waterworld is one of the best movies ever. So like, if you know where I
I'm
stand
there
on
with you
terrible,
on. I'm
but
there
also
with you on
great.
that.
Yeah,
I
underrated,
live in
amazing
Wales,
movie.
where it rains all the time, so Waterworld is just like a Tuesday. So we've all got gills and webbed feet.
There you go.
That's what's coming. That's what's coming down the pipe with Forbidden Psalm. So, real quick. So I've been flipping through the edited, the first pass, Endless Horrors. So I assume the spreads are the 10 that you guys created and then did the art for, because my God, they're insane. I particularly like this one here in the back. Where was it? Well, I mean, I want my favorite one to be a different one, but then I keep stopping at like the Thousand Eyes one, and it just looks so good on that light background. But there's one way here in the back that just had like an interesting name to it that I had to, oh wait, here it is. The horrifying space penguin that wants to consume the stars. Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting one. Horrifying egg thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I genuinely did auto-generate them all. This was not like, I didn't just do this to satisfy Jet. I auto-generated them, and that was one of the ones I rolled. And of course, I added Space Penguin into the list purposefully because of the link. But yeah, that was one we generated, and then that's what Vil drew for it, was this just horrible penguin in its egg. Like, and I was just like, this is the best fucking art. So good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, all the artists that you've done and all the work that you've done are fantastic. I love all the Forbidden Psalm, but I will say, this is probably my favorite art in any Forbidden Psalm book, period. It's incredible. And the cover, I cannot get over this like very Mary-esque aspect to the eldritchness to it. Like, it's such a good mix of, the Catholicism and eldritch horror. That's just so perfect.
Yeah, there's a whole mechanic in the game called zealotry, that your crew gains zealotry as you play, and that's what you need to perform the final ritual. And one of the things you do at the end of the game is, if you're successful and you summon your endless horror, you take a test for every cultist in your crew to see if they like realize what they've done. So there's this like almost moment of clarity they could have, and it's the only time in the game where you want to fail the roll. So if you pass the roll, they kind of realize, oh shit, we've just summoned this endless horror, it's going to end the world. Oh god. And if you fail, they go, no, this is great. And they're joyous in it. And there's this like rapturous moment for them. And that's like a really important kind of theme in the game, was like, yeah, you are playing as these cultists who are, they fully believe in this. They think this is the right thing to do. They're not necessarily bad people. They're doing a terrible thing, but they think it's the right thing to do.
I mean, is it really that bad? I mean,
ending the world right now. I'm like, I could go either way.
Has anyone seen Cabin in the Woods? Cabin in the Woods? Cabin in the Woods? Anybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna go back to. Ooh, that's not this one. The Three of Us. Jarrett, you're moved. So what else is on the docket, Jarrett? What else do we got going on?
Currently live on crowdfunding by BackerKit. Our first project there, the Genesis, say it correctly, Drew. The Parthenogenesis of Hungry Hollow. It's our first project there. It is the first hardcover for Liminal Horror. You can get Liminal Horror Investigators currently from our store. Liminal Horror Deluxe Edition is forthcoming sometime in the future. But we're making the shift to doing the Deluxe Edition in hardcover, and in discussions with Goblin and Josh, the twin demons behind the written aspect of LH right now. We just decided to make the jump to go ahead and do this one in hardcover. It's going to be a nice, easy peasy 6x9. You can follow. I'm sure I'd put the link in, or if not, I'm sure Ryan will find the link in there. And folks can check it out. I don't want to say too much about it, although I will say there is if folks want to read more, they can read more on the page, which has Goblin's very eloquent way of like delineating all of this information. It's a weird, there's a weird infection going on with some bees, and that's kind of where I want to leave it, because I don't want to spoil too much in case someone listening to this ends up playing it later on. But there's a lot. I will say this though. When they came to me with the manuscript and I did the initial read over in 𝗏𝗏𝗧 many months ago, I looked at it and they have a trailer park in there, and I asked them to please like flesh that out. And so they came back with like, I think it's 27 trailers or something in this trailer park. So it's like a full on mini campaign inside this situation that's coming off. And that's just something that pushing designers, working with people like Will, working with people like Goblin Archives and Josh and Christian Kessler and Eric Hill and Stella Condry and all these folks, like pushing them into doing more. Like one of the greatest sounding boards for doing more is Sean Richer, 𝗏𝗏𝗧 𝗖𝗵𝘁𝘁𝗵 with who is Orbital Intelligence. When you do 𝗏𝗏𝗧 on Sean's stuff, Sean's like, tell me where I need more. And then that's when you're just like, cool, add another D300 table, add another, and like, it's just one of those, like, getting folks to not necessarily worry about, let me worry about the whole part of what sells. Like that's my job. And like, let's worry together about how we push and how we sell it. But when it comes to making the book, don't be stuck inside a page count, I guess, like let's let it breathe. And part of jumping to this hardcover, jumping outside of the typical restraints of a zine. And yes, I know folks will be like, well, you can do any number of pages in a zine if you get big enough staples. Well, yes, of course we can. Absolutely. But we wanted to go ahead and put this one into hardcover. Just one, to make it match up with the deluxe edition that's coming in the future. Two, to make it match up with the remastered versions of previous liminal horror modules that are, on the docket for some time in the future as well. It's going to be a gorgeous book. Currently, the crowd is picking that the ribbon bookmark is going to be yellow. We're approaching our first stretch goal for that one, which will be that ribbon bookmark. We've also got some, I say bookmark, but yes, we have ribbon, and then we have printed bookmarks. If we hit 20, sorry, neighbors were leaving. Somebody's rocking out to some, I can't even tell what they're rocking out to. And then we have a few more stretch goals on that one before it goes up at the 21 days left on it. So we've just been at it a little bit over a week. BackerKit crowdfunding is an interesting platform. We're learning to use that as we go. So thank you to Goblin Archives and Josh while we're learning how to use this platform, yet another tool. I think we're going to stop at 2 crowdfunding platforms. I think that's probably enough for now. We'll see. So,
yeah, I remember when you were first coming on, when the SPI was still getting up and going, you're like, we're gonna hold off on kickstarting stuff for a while. We're gonna do this, and then you drop, 𝗏𝗏𝗧 𝗖𝗵𝘁𝗶, which only made almost $250,000, and then we have Endless Horrors here that's got 2 weeks left. It's almost $30,000, and then we got 𝗏𝗏𝗧 that's only been going for a week and it's already at 14K on BackerKit. So I think you're backing some winners there at Space Penguin.
Taking it slow and taking it steady, and not just jumping in head first. Like, I think because we could have definitely let up from the get-go and dived into all that, but it's a lot to learn, and I'm still learning stuff. And yes, a lot of the concepts are the same, but the UI is different, and then a lot of the thought process behind it. Kickstarter is, a lot of folks have used Kickstarter for years, and it's been the same for years, and they haven't really done a whole lot with updating user interface on the backer side or the creator side. BK, relatively new platform. It's like this, it's not even 2 years old yet, and in not even a year, and then being publicly used. The beta was 2 years ago. I was with EF, we did Land of Eve there, you know, when it was still beta wave, right? And it's come a long way since then. And they're fairly responsive to how we're working with stuff as well. So again, nothing's ever perfect. No, if I could build a crowdfunding platform, it would be just like, it would be for us, it would be just straight up pre-order, and it would be a lot less, but that's not how this works. So learning to use this has been a little bit of a curve, but not too impossible. It's got neat things like polls that you can do, and you can set up like polls, and you can set up like streams. Like if I was better at setting this whole thing up, I would have streamed this event through our page. I don't know. It was just one more thing for the future. For the future, get ready for it, Ryan. You'll host a stream on one of these crowd funds. Like, I don't know. It's just, you know, another thing to do.
Anything that you guys do, we're down for. We did have the Liminal Horror Boys on recently, and they did their first basically the writing seminar for adapting an adventure, which led into Parthenogenesis and the Twisted Classics Jam. So if you guys ever want to come on and teach people how to do their own Forbidden Psalm, we will always have a platform for that. And however we can help, obviously, you know, we do this because we love it and because we love supporting the people who make good stuff and are generally good people, which happens to be both of you guys. So yeah.
Just a quick thing behind the curtains as well, because Jarrett was just talking about like the crowdfunding, and then you mentioned about being on the winners. It's because, like, to be fair, like the time is taken behind the scenes. Like we don't, so on, you know, from the Forbidden Psalm stuff, we don't even approach crowdfunding until the stuff's finished, you know, so we make sure that like we can deliver it in time, that it isn't going to just be complete shit. And yeah, like there's been a lot of thinking and conversations behind the scenes on how do we build this in a sustainable way. Like Jarrett will tell you, and you held up, my output is silly sometimes, like the amount of content I'm making and stuff. And Jarrett's like, okay, let's make sure it's good. Let's make sure there's quality. Let's spend the time on it. And he slows me down when I need to be slowed down. To make sure that we're like actually putting out quality stuff, not just any old shit. Yeah, so it is this kind of back and forth conversation. Like me and Jarrett meet every week to talk about what are we doing, how are we doing it, how does this work, have those like really robust, in-depth conversations. And it's why, touch wood, it's paying off. And you know, you're seeing successful campaigns, and you're seeing like really good shit coming out of Space Penguin as a result.
Yeah, you know, I mean that's one thing that's great. I mean, there's so many great things about Jarrett, right? So we'll just talk about him for a second. Then we've had so many conversations, both on stream and off stream. And, you know, the thing that I love about Space Penguin and Jarrett, you know, who is Space Penguin, is that not only does everything come out like it's all good stuff, but it's all good people making good stuff. And the amount of work that Jarrett puts in behind the scenes, especially since it's pretty much just like you and Debbie, right? Is incredible. And Die Sugars, yeah, like incredible. But it's just that you care, and putting out good stuff for good people, for people to actually have, not just to like try to make as much money as possible, is just such a it's great in the space, you know. That's not everyone's goals, and I really just appreciate the amount of work that both you guys are putting in for all the stuff that you're putting out. And yeah, I know I have, in our conversations, only scratched the surface on how much work Jarrett does, and I don't know how either of you get a fraction of that stuff done in a day, but I mean, you're still chugging along.
Whenever like Jarrett like throws me something else he's working on, I'm like, how? Because I throw you so much shit, and you're always like nailing it and on time. I'm like, how the fuck do you have time for other shit right now? Like, what the hell? And yeah, like the stuff coming out of Space Penguin, like putting myself aside, like the other stuff, the other content, like I'm a massive fan. It's great to actually like work and be published by a house where you're like, oh, I just love the shit they're doing. Like all of the other stuff, the Liminal Horror stuff, like I'm backing this shit. Like this is stuff that I want to own as well. Yeah, it's just fucking great quality shit coming out.
Well, all of it's stuff that I would use and do use and have used, and not just from the oh, I need to play test this aspect. It's like the stuff I need to, I mean, that's the real reason I started into doing all of this stuff in the first place, was because I wanted more books, more cool RPG books in my life. And didn't have any money. I kind of still don't have any money, but like, so it's part of the reason I still make a bunch of cool stuff. But there's just not a lot of stuff that there is a lot of stuff. But again, I don't have any money. So if I found that if I attached myself to projects, I got contributor copies and stuff. And then that kind of became like, okay, cool. Now you kind of make all the stuff that you want to make, you know? And I mean, I'm lucky though. Like I've worked with a shit ton of people and it's great to do it. And like, I kind of have that ethos behind all of it. Like let's make it as good as we can, you know? Like there are some projects where I look back and I'm just like, I could have done a better job. But also, hey, we can remaster that now. I've learned shit in the last 4 or 5 years, you know, like things are getting done in like, and other publishers and stuff I've worked with too are Melsonia is like re-releasing Fungi with a fully fleshed out, like it just went live with even more stuff, and she's like adding more art because and if you read the Igloo Tree thing today, she was just like, it was the first RPG book that I'd done, and like I talk to people a lot and people are just like, yeah, it was the first thing I ever did, or it was this I did, and I'm so happy to be able to redo it later and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I feel that way about 500 freaking things right now. I would love to have the time to go. But if you ask how I do a lot of this stuff, it's like there's an LCD Sound System song called Losing My Edge, and that song plays in my head almost nonstop. And the line is, the kids are coming up behind. And that's the reason that I keep doing so much stuff. The reason I keep doing so much stuff is because I get to work with cool people and do so much stuff. Like, since I've dialed back to freelance a lot, I have been able to work more in depth on larger projects with like Sean at Orbital Intelligence, and of course the mothership stuff, all the FP stuff with you, Will. But I still have, that's part of why we publish what we publish. And, I get a lot of pitches, people being like, hey, do you think you would want to sell this on your store? And I was like, well, I'm trying to keep it to stuff that I've actually directly had a hand in development or editing in some way, shape, or form. Like, so yeah, we're going to have mothership box sets next week that'll go up for sale, and we'll have like a sale on our mothership line of stuff. But I've had something to do with every single one of those, like my name's in most of them. And even if it's not, my fingers are all over those because I wanted that book to be really good and something that I would, if I'm going to publish it, then I want it to be something that I would pick up. So thanks for saying that, Ryan. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Again, both you guys are fantastic, and we're going to keep supporting you guys as long as, just don't become shitty for no reason. That would break my heart. That's already
I'm too busy making RPGs.
Yeah. We'll keep you all in line. But yeah. Listen, I know, Will, you said you had a time. I think we passed that already, so we're going to bounce out of here. But I just want you to know, open invitation anytime that you want to hop in. I'll make this 4 windows. And since we talk about Forbidden Psalm every month, you're always welcome. And Jarrett, always a pleasure. I think every month I feel like I'm probably the first, if not the top 3 every time something drops.
You were the first this week. You were the first this week on New Release Wednesday. You got it.
And that's never going to change. I love everything you put out. I love everything that, all the people that you work with put out. And we're going to keep continuing here on the Weekly Scroll to support Space Penguin. So if you're listening, you definitely want to check out everything that Will does with Forbidden Psalm and beyond, and everything Jarrett does over at Space Penguin. But again, thank you both so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And we'll see at least one, if not both of you, next month.
Next time we'll talk about board games.
Very excited for the Pineapple Skull next month. All right. Again, thank you both. We will see you all out there next week. Bye.